What we never saw was that the relationship wasn't love. It was both recognition and misrecognition, the reactivation of something unfinished inside of us, but seen through the gaze of another. What we never saw was that their empathy was cold, a simulation that mirrored need, not care. What we never saw was that the idealization was a test, a spotlight shining on our earliest wound, seeing if we would flinch. What we never saw was that the safety we felt was the calm before psychic inversion, the moment the false self casing began to seal. What we never saw was that being chosen wasn't intimacy, it was conscription into a fantasy already written. What we never saw was that when they said, "I see you," they were really saying, "I own your reflection." What we never saw was that collapse didn't happen the day they left. It happened the day we stopped existing inside ourselves. What we never saw was that trauma bonding wasn't attachment. It was the nervous system mistaking terror for belonging. What we never saw was that our hypervigilance was love's ghost, trying to hold coherence in a hall of mirrors. What we never saw was that every apology was an addition, every reconciliation a rewrite of the same script. What we never saw was that closure meant returning to the crime scene of our own erasure. What we never saw was that we had to become their double, their mirrored child they once were, frozen again in ASR1 terror. What we never saw was that the false self-casing we built to survive them had its own hunger. It fed on explanation, not truth. What we never saw was that our breakdown was not madness. It was the psyche re-entering the organising gate, trying to find reality again. What we never saw was that the shame was borrowed, inherited from the narcissist's internal mother, whispered through rejection. What we never saw was the silence after discard was their final act of control, the cold empathy of absence. What we never saw was that forgiveness doesn't heal inversion, only truth does, spoken back through the fracture. What we never saw was that recovery is not linear. It spirals through annihilation, reconstruction, and symbolic rebirth. What we never saw was that love was never gone, only hidden behind layers of fear waiting to be remirrored by the self. What we never saw was that we were maybe already inverted before we ever met the narcissistic partner. What we never saw was that grief wasn't for what we lost, but for what never existed. What we never saw was that the abuse was systemic, contagious, and symbolic. What we never saw was that we would have to rebuild the self from fragments, without a blueprint, without a mirror. What we never saw was us.